everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Great to have you all. Remember, we are so grateful. Now, this is Saturday, so we got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 3 days away from me making my personal appearance. Going to have Shannon and Dexter Ernest Wayne Carpenter with me in San Antonio. You can go to Facebook, find the Black Hole Chapter Facebook page, and get all the information. Sign up. It starts at 6, ends at 7:30. A solid hour and a half. It's not eating at 6 and then talking from 7 to 7:30. It is an hour and a half of Raider talk, answering your questions. It's going to be an awesome night, completely free. Doesn't cost you a dime. Go sign up. You need to RSVP. Check my social media. I put all of it up there. Go check it out. I look forward to meeting you. Remember, you can also follow me on Instagram. When you go to Hondo SR, you can follow me on Twitter. When you go to @Hondo Carpenter, and always go to si.com/NFL/Raiders to get all of our articles. Upper right-hand corner, click on the newsletter link, sign in right there, and we won't spam you. But what you'll do is 3 days a week, get an email with our best stories. You're not going to miss anything. It's going to be great. This guy right here is one of my dear friends. Love him. Just a great friend. The one and only Johnny Guitars. Johnny, how you doing, bud?
I look good. I feel good, but I feel strange. All the people out there, they feel strange too. We've had 20 some weeks in a row of football, and we had that preview the bye week before the Super Bowl. That doesn't feel great. Now we have to adjust. It's a strange feeling, but March 31st is coming. We'll get there. Spring pro football. I'm excited for it. But for now, strange feelings can be a strange weekend for many folks.
John, I am shockingly really excited about spring football this year, more than I've ever been, other than when the XFL came out and the USFL originally. I was more excited for those two, but I am genuinely looking forward to it. How about you?
I am looking forward to it. I'm glad there's been consolidation. I have thought from the beginning it was going to take about 4 seasons for this to literally stick and become what it's going to be. This is year 2. I'm excited for some of the rules changes that we've seen. They're going to tweak the kickoffs a bit. They have now hold on to your seats, folks. They have actually defined what is a catch in writing to use in these games. So I am excited. When we get to 4 years, we're going to see this league populated with a lot of faces and names that we know from college and pro football. There's a few now. There'll be more this year, but by the time we get to 4 years, it's going to be like, oh, I remember that guy. I saw that guard play at Arizona, Georgia, Notre Dame, whatever it is. And I kind of like watching some of these plays. So I see this absolutely sticking. I think it's going to take about 4 years. Consolidation makes sense. On we go. So we got our shorter off season this time before there's pro football again.
I love how they've aligned themselves with the NFL. It's smart. I also like that they're going to do things you're not going to see in the NFL. They're going to let it go there and percolate and see if they like it. And then if it works, move it up to the NFL. I like it. Now, I need to explain to everybody. John comes on once a week. John is a terrific journalist, and a very respected attorney. He lives in Atlanta, and John comes on each and every week for this reason. I cover the Raiders in a microcosm every single day. And when John joins us, we look at the NFL from a macro view, certainly how it impacts the Raiders. It's never not Raider talk, but how it impacts the Raiders. And then sometimes we do get into some micro. So we're going to start with a couple of micro things. John, yesterday we had 2 reports. The first was a big one about the disrespect for Antonio Pierce. DraftKings comes out, has Jim Harbaugh as the lead for Coach of the Year. Fine. I don't have a problem with that. That roster has underproduced. And so you bring him in with $40 million over the cap. I think they're going to have to get rid of too many players for this to be true, but I understand it. An argument can be made. But Antonio Pierce wasn't even listed. I mean, there wasn't even 1,000,000 to 1 odds. There was no odds for him to be Coach of the Year, which to me is complete disrespect, completely preposterous. I can tell you have, and I'm not a fan, as you know, but covering this team, I have become to just get used to this organization being disrespected. It makes no sense to me, John. I don't think it would to anyone that was being fair, Raider fan or not, with what he did. No OTAs, no mini camps, no training camps. Didn't have his full staff. He didn't have a staff that he picked, and didn't have a full staff to get to 5-4 with Elmer's glue sticks and Scotch tape. Phenomenal job. To me, this is outlandish and disrespectful. Your take.
Well, I was looking around for some glue and some tape. I got tape, but it's too far to reach. My perspective is, I understand what you're saying, but I'm thinking maybe just pump the brakes for a second. We're talking about Coach of the Year for 2024, the year to come, first of all. And we're talking about a marketing betting line. So, if anything, maybe this isn't just a little bit of a dig at Pierce, it's a little bit of a dig at the Raiders because they don't think your new coach is going to get enough action. Harbaugh, sure, let's slide him right in. He's going to get action right away, but Pierce, nah, they're not even going to worry about him. So I think it's a long way away. I do believe there's a chance. I'm not a DraftKings expert, but my guess is that you will be able to bet on all 32 of the head coaches before the season starts for Coach of the Year with different odds and payouts. So I think it's an initial surprising slap to the face that stings just a little bit, but I'm not sure it's going to hurt. And I do think when I look at these things and these lines and these payouts, they are marketing based first. They're not scientific or analysis based. But I see a little bit of a dig there. But the bigger dig is if we could put this guy on the board, he's not going to actually draw us enough action where this shiny, funny looking thing guy walks around, doesn't like chicken, loves chicken, can't shake hands, can shake hands, all over the place. He's a lightning bolt. He's going to bring action. So I hear you. I see it, but it's maybe not exactly what we think.
No, I'm including in the disrespect that they don't think the Raiders are going to get any action. All right, let's move on to the next report. Jimmy Garoppolo, we all kind of knew the Raiders are going to cut him and move on. People saw our report. Tell them about it.
Well, the interesting thing is here is Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to face a 2-game suspension for violating the league's substance abuse policies, but it's got a little bit of a twist. It looks like Garoppolo used a prescribed medication, but he did not go through the procedure to get the exemption for it. As a result, it's going to be 2 games, and he's not going to fight it, which actually he doesn't deserve credit for, but it seems to be the right thing to do. If you made a mistake, if you didn't go through and get the approval beforehand, or if you said, I'm just going to accept the consequences, then you should serve the time. This paints it as not the greatest ending, but this is also, I'm looking, if it was prescribed and he didn't get it cleared, there's probably a suspension that has to be, because we're talking about protecting the shield, the entire group of players, owners, everybody underneath it, not just picking on Jim Garoppolo, but it's a strange ending to what was a very strange tenure in what appears to be, as you mentioned, the inevitable cutting of Garoppolo. Who knows if he plays in the NFL again or when, but teams can hold 3 quarterbacks. Somebody else may come back, get hurt, next year. I mean, for God's sakes, we're going to hear a lot about Joe Flacco for a long time, and people will remember that guys can come off the street absolutely every season in the NFL.
And I got to tell you, I think there's a place in the NFL for Jimmy Garoppolo, certainly. All right, now we're going to flip to a macro view that certainly impacts the Raiders, but it's NFL talk. We're going to call this Expansion Saturday. And I want to talk about the expansion of the NFL. We're going to talk about expanding the season, the franchises, and the rosters. So let's start, first of all, with the season. You have a proposal that I love, is move the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. Okay? Most schools are closed on Monday of President's Day. A lot of businesses are, not a lot, but some banks, that kind of stuff. But move it to President's Day weekend, or keep it where it's at and move it to a Saturday. Now, a couple of things. I prefer keeping it where it's at because I think 2 weeks is horrible unless you expand the season and add a second bye week. Then I love the idea of playing it on the Sunday before President's Day. Johnny Guitars, talk to me. Explain
Let's
what you
look at
think here.
this. Yeah, let's look at it. It didn't used to be this way, yes, but now the season has grown and expanded to the point where I'm scratching my head the other day saying, why are we not at Super Bowl weekend here? The Super Bowl is the largest single event in America of its kind. It's not even close. 200 million people or so tuning in. Now you're starting to really stretch into true holiday territory. For younger folks out there, this was not the case 30 or 40 years ago. That the audience wasn't nearly that big. Now it is. For a couple decades, many of us have been saying, move the darn Super Bowl to Saturday. And I understand a long time ago there was some pushback with hotel rooms and TV and all this kind of stuff. But now this thing is so big, that stuff went right out the window. It's out the window for good. So I'm with you in that I would like this more to be on the Saturday than extending another week to President's Day weekend. So let's give you two options, NFL. Either move it to Saturday, or now that the schedule is where it is, now that we're at 17 games, who does not need a second bye week during the football season? What team of 53 does not need one? There is not any. They all could use one. If you want to go a wild step and take a universal bye, first of all, your TV partners are going to have an issue. Maybe there's a way to do that by division or conference of some kind, but that's a huge step. We'll leave that out there. But I'm looking at the calendar. I'm looking at people going on vacation. I'm looking at people making plans, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, why don't we take the low-hanging fruit, NFL? Why don't we do what we can to tee the Super Bowl up on President's Day weekend? Put it on the Sunday if it's going to be on a Sunday. That way, the enormous glut of people having a rough day at work or not working, etc., you take that right out of the equation. Now, in the old days, my mom would tell me, you're crazy. It's not that big a deal. And she probably was right. But now it is that big a deal. The business world has spoken. They know what it is. Let's take the low-hanging fruit. Let's move this thing to President's Day weekend. Monday is a male holiday. It's a bank holiday. It's a somewhat soft holiday. It's a bigger holiday when kids are out of school. Let's do that, or let's put the thing on Saturday. If we do move it to President's Day weekend, I do believe more often than not, you'd either have to maybe move the start of the schedule or add a second bye week. And I easily agree with millions of folks that would say, I got no problem with that.
So let me tell you a couple of things. I am a big proponent. We've talked about it before. I think you trim it down to 2 preseason games, add another regular season, get to 18. And then I think you add 2 bye weeks and then move the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. I'm fine with that, but don't change the playoffs. Leave the playoffs the way they are. When too many teams get in, I mean, listen, I remember when in baseball, the playoffs, now there's all these wild cards. Now, and listen, I used to be a huge baseball fan. They've lost me. I don't even know. Well, I do know because I had to do it for work. But I don't even know the last time I watched a baseball game when I didn't get paid. I just don't care. I literally just don't care. I love hockey. I love the NHL. Hockey's great. Just so many teams in the playoffs. To me, expanded to 18 games, 2 bye weeks. You move the Super Bowl to the Sunday of President's Day. Now, to do that, we've talked about this before, but it brings us to our next point. You have to expand the rosters. I would like to see them make the roster 63 players. Add 10. I'm just saying, add 10 and then add an additional 10 for a practice squad. Okay, I'm good with that. So 63 players and add of 10, 10 more, 10 on the prospectus squad. Because if you keep adding games, I mean, this year it's ridiculous. There were teams adding new players for the Super Bowl. Just
Yeah,
ridiculous. That
it
that
is.
that's just it diminishes the product. I mean, I think it was I think it was the Dolphins. Their last big game at the playoffs. I mean, they had, I don't even remember how many new players they had because of injuries. You've got to expand the roster or it's not going to work, John. So again, 18 games, 2 preseasons, 2 buys, move the Super Bowl to Presidents. I'm golden. I don't want any more games unless you take preseason away. It's just too much. Talking to the players, it's too much. But to do that, you expand the roster to 63 or even 60. 63 may be a little too many. I know you want to go higher, but I'm trying to think of the owners. Trying to above 63 is never going to happen. Between 60 and 63 is going to be rare. I think you could get enough owners to go to 60 and then expand to 18 games, move the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. Your thoughts, John?
Well, we got to tie in a couple things. I want to explore a couple of things. I'll talk about the roster first, and then we're going to go back in the schedule and look at a couple of important pieces of math, which I have tried to double check, which is always a good idea. The roster expansion is important for so many things. To me, the very top is kind of that Dolphins example that you gave. What are we doing to identify the best team? The best team for the season of 2023. We hurt ourselves as an NFL product when we have the Dolphins hiring 3 guys off the street, and one of them I think had to start in your playoffs. That is not good at all. The best way to identify the best team is to have a consistency of product and not have them hiring people off the street in the middle of December. When we talk about expanding the rosters, I want player safety to be in there. That's why I believe you go 3 deep at each of the main positions, which would get us to 66 for the roster size that I would like. And I would say, you want to stop there? Okay, give me 68 or go to 70 with a round number, because you got to have some people kicking the ball and maybe a specialist. So maybe 70 is the roster size I would like, especially if we're going to expand the schedule a little bit. We talk about safety. We talk about, obviously, the consistency of product. And how about development? You want to avoid tanking? Get some guys out there that all of a sudden, hey, we can go to the third guy on our depth chart to play here. We can protect the health of the first guy. We don't have to worry about tanking. How many teams do we see not mailing it in, but not every single guy of the 11 on the field is all in and giving the best effort that he can? And as we know, as we've heard from all the guys that play the sport, most of the time, most of the plays, if 1 or 2 guys is off, you're going to get the thing blown up. It's 11 on 11. You may need to win 6 to have a productive play for your team. If you've got 1 out to lunch or 1 less than full power, you may get smoked. So that's where roster size makes all the sense in the world. Now, I got to have a humongous pat on the back for the NFL. I think the playoff setup they have now is the best in the history of pro sports. It is perfect. You got 1 team that gets the big bye, which is great in the home field. And the way the wild card weekend sets up is literally perfect as far as who's playing who. Then you've got that divisional round, which to me is the single best weekend of football in America all year. I don't care. Rose Bowl, I don't care. Labor Day football, I don't care. What is it? That one to me, and to you crazy nuts out there that love this sport, that is the best. It's better than the championship games. It's better than the Super Bowl. That is the best, because in those games, you are seeing the 2 eventual teams that will be in the Super Bowl and, of course, the champion. But then you get a little extra. That, to me, is the best. So I want a massive compliment with the playoffs. We don't want to screw with that at all. But where are we at with the schedule in the situations with the divisions? We've got 8 divisions of 4 teams. So just to circle the wagons on the schedule, you've got 2 games against every other team in your division. So there's your 6. That's 6 right off the bat. And then it gets a little bit, you have an opportunity, it can get a little bit fuzzy. So that takes care of our divisions. We've got 6 games here, right? if you mathematically look at it from there, you've got 7 other divisions in the NFL. If you played 2 of those teams each year, all of a sudden you're up to 20 games. That's too many, not even a question. And if you look at how do we break this down, it ends up uneven at 17, and there's no really simple way to get to a 17 game schedule with the divisions the way they are. And
well, you got to go 18. That's why I said
yeah,
18.
if you go 18, you can start doing math because you say, okay, I got my 6 games in division. There's 3 other divisions in our conference. What if we play 2 of those teams a year? There's another 6 games, and you can pretty easily get to 18. The point I'm trying to make is when you look at the numbers and the size of the division, the more games you add to the schedule, you're running the risk of putting less emphasis on the division games. And I realize scheduling is impossible, and thankfully they've got the artificial intelligence computers working on it, except for those final 2 weeks. Remember when you had, or 3 weeks, when you had the Giants and Eagles playing 2 out of the last 3 weeks and the Lions and Vikings playing 2 of the last 3 weeks? We didn't forget about that. But when we look at expanding, whether we're expanding the calendar or the regular season games, we must consider what are we doing to not dilute the divisions even more? Because if we're going to dilute them completely, maybe we just lose the divisions and have 2 conferences and just take a list from there. This is a further idea down the road. My point is, if we're going to keep divisions, what's the right thing? Well, we don't want teams, you don't want to play your division teams 3 times a year because that's going to be uneven, or 4 times a year because that's insane. There's a lot that goes into it, and we're tying this whole picture together. Do we expand the playoffs? No, they're perfect. Do we expand the season? Well, we need to expand the calendar. If we expand the season a bit by trimming the preseason, like Hondo's saying, we must expand the rosters. And then let's look at a second for the bigger picture. Well, should the NFL consider expanding franchises? In short, absolutely not. Number one, not very easy. There's 32 franchises. We'd have to go to 36, right, to get a nice even number. What 4 cities could produce an NFL and support an NFL franchise right now? I don't think there's 4. Can you think of 4 where it's like, well, no, that doesn't look very easy. So I think we put that out of the picture for essentially for good. There may be a question of whether you go to 4 8-team divisions, and that might make
I'm going to tell you, John, I'm going to stop you right there why I vehemently disagree with you. Okay? I hate expanding the teams.
Yep, me too.
Okay? I hate it. And I want to tell you why. Years ago in Hartshorn, Oklahoma, I had a buddy that lived there, and I went down on a fishing trip. Across the street from him lived Warren Spahn, the great Major League Baseball pitcher. Remember Warren Spahn?
Yeah.
So one day I'm fishing, I leave him alone. He's outside, I'm outside, and he just kind of chats with me for a minute. Okay? So I start chatting with him. And he was so warm to me. Oh my goodness, what a great guy. And we just started chatting, and I was talking baseball, and he wanted to talk sports. So he came to me, I didn't go for it, nothing. And I asked him, and he starts talking about how back in his day, you had to learn how to pitch. He goes, I hate these pitch counts. And I told him, I gave up on baseball years ago when I went to a minor league game and a guy's pitching a no-hitter and they took him out because he was at his pitch count. Well, then it's not real baseball. Okay? And he told me how he thought the game was worse for it. He thought there were more injuries because we coddled guys. And he talked about, this was another thing he said. He said, we leave guys out of the Hall of Fame that played in the Negro Leagues because they weren't allowed to compete with us, who were phenomenal. And he goes, I think the Negro League records should be considered exactly like the regular when they were divided. He goes, because the level of competition was that good. He was very vehement about it. And he goes, But as they keep expanding baseball, he goes, now there are guys who are 1 and 2 pitchers who wouldn't have even pitched back in the day. And he really sold me because I used to be a big expansion guy. He really sold me on every time you expand, you're weakening the pool. You're making the game worse. Till today, I hate baseball. I loved baseball when I was a kid. I grew up watching the Tigers and Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell and Steve Kemp and Jack Morris and Doyle Alexander and Bert B. Home Blyleven. I loved all that. But to me, this game is perfect. You can expand the season, but you expand the rosters. But to me, there has to be one absolute. We will not expand franchises. Now, I give you a couple caveats because to do it, you're going to probably have to add 6. Okay. I don't like that with 8 divisions. So if you add 8, I don't like that either. Again, it's expanding too much. I know down the road, they're telling everybody they would like to have, like now they have the NFC and the AFC, have a conference that's all foreign teams. Never going to happen. At the Super Bowl this year, I had dinner one night with 3 players. And you're going to love this. So we're sitting at dinner one night, and it was them. A couple of them had their significant others. One didn't. And Shannon was there, and Dexter and I. We're just sitting there having dinner. And we're talking about the issue of a foreign league. Because one of them asked me, do you think this will ever happen? And I'm like, I said, do you think this will ever happen? One of them goes, where? He goes, I don't want to play in England. I didn't go to California because I didn't want to pay California taxes. You think I want to pay European taxes? He goes, I don't want to go play in Toronto. I don't want to play Canadian taxes. Now, if anyone's wondering, Hondo's making a political statement. This guy isn't even a Republican or a Democrat. He's apolitical. He just doesn't like paying taxes. And he's like, I don't want to play there. I don't want to be away from my family that long. He goes, it's a long season. I don't want to do it. I have no desire to make the plane trips to America. I mean, I'm telling you, John, I know there are some players who aren't in the league that if the expansion of the league meant you have to go play in a foreign country, let's go. But for the most part, the guys that are in there now and deserving it don't want it. And I'm vehemently against it. Do you see the argument? Do you agree or disagree?
100%. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to visit this, since we're looking at what could be or what should be expanded. There is no argument for expansion of NFL franchises. If anything, by far there's a better argument for contracting them. So we do not expect to see that, and it should not happen. Now, the idea of expanding internationally, I don't know that we're ever going to shake that idea. It's a lot more likely in the NHL, which is something I heard about in the 90s. It's a lot more likely to happen in a more global game like that. It's nearly impossible to see it happening in the NFL. And to go back even into the 90s again, that's probably the first time that people said, well, why is there not an NFL franchise in Toronto? It's, depending on how you count, the 4th biggest metro area or 4th biggest city in North America. And at that time, the explanation was TAXES, 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 taxes. And it's still got to be the same. It's a great thing that the NFL didn't go to Toronto and then either have to backtrack or try to figure out how to keep the thing floating, as we've seen other sports do. There is no place for international expansion. Give me, give you, give everybody that Super Bowl in the new Aloha Stadium, which I'm telling you is coming in the 2030s, before you give me a league or division out of country, out of continent. I do think the NFL has done well here to kind of make a home base for the NFL Europe game. I do think that since we're giving and taking with them here today, we're going to give them a couple more international games. They're going to give us another week on the calendar to get the Super Bowl onto President's Day. I think we can all make this work here, but we are clearly in total agreement. And we just, maybe as a public service for everybody, just shut the door on any possible NFL expansion idea. It's not going to happen. No way, Jose. No how. Brown cow. It's not on the table, and it shouldn't be. They got these other things to tackle first: roster expansion, calendar/game schedule expansion. We can figure out whether 2 or 3 preseason games are necessary, and there's certainly an argument if the roster is expanded. Somebody may say, hey, we need to keep that many games. There's arguments to be had, but the neat thing is, as great as the NFL is right now, as nearly perfect as the playoff setup is, as successful as the Super Bowl experience was in Las Vegas, a city 20 years ago, 40 years ago would have not even been possibly thought to host in our lifetimes.
Timers can't be set for 24 hours or
Oop.
longer.
There is still, hey Siri, there is still possibility to improve the sport, and the people in charge of it should be paying attention. They should be doing it. I hope they are listening.
Last quick thing for me, John, is I have family members who lost a home game to an NFL team that they have tickets to this year because they went overseas. And they were livid. They're like, listen, we're season ticket holders. This is not So a lot of questions here. All right, John, last thing for me, it's completely Las Vegas related. I thought I've been to multiple Super Bowls. This was the smoothest. I mean, Vegas is built for these big events. It wasn't bigger than the city. Traffic was not outrageous. Everything was laid out perfect. Now, the internet sucked. Yeah. Completely sucked. But that was at the game. But that's on the NFL. That's not on Allegiant Stadium. That's on the NFL. But other than that, and that doesn't even affect fans. Fans don't care. But other than that, the entire week was awesome. I thought Las Vegas represented themselves incredibly well. We know it's coming back. That's pretty much a foregone conclusion. But I'm telling you, of all the Super Bowls I've been to, it wasn't even close. I mean, it does not even compare to quality of Super Bowl. It blew everybody else out of the water. Terrific event, well hosted, was perfect for everybody. I heard no complaints other than the internet on game day. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, amazingly enough, it's kind of set up to host it. You've got this strip of hospitality with enough towels, water, organization, practice, used to hosting it, logistics, moving people, airports, cars. You can get there by foot. The whole thing really lays out on paper to be fantastic. And then boom, it's delivered. Look, this was not anywhere near an overwhelming situation like we saw in Detroit, like we saw in Jacksonville. It was not even close to a massively stretched out situation like you see in other cities. My city, Atlanta, can host a Super Bowl pretty well because it's got an area around the stadium where things can get done and people can get around easy. Those things exist. We all know about how great Indianapolis is, for example, hosting basketball tournaments, but the Super Bowl is huge. There were so many more people there, of course, than were at the game. We saw the success now that the NFL draft has become. For sure, the draft is going to be coming back to Las Vegas probably sooner than later as well, as it should. The Super Bowl is not only a no-brainer, it went off so smoothly. I think that if the NFL decides to create kind of like pillars, maybe a half a dozen pillars where it's kind of like the home base for the Super Bowl, you'd have to absolutely think that Las Vegas would be the second one out west. Obviously, they've got Los Angeles for millions of reasons, including the NFL West headquarters. And the setup of Las Vegas is just built for this. Like you said, it's not that it wasn't a blip on the radar, but there are conventions and other stuff that come to Las Vegas that bring even more people. And they have even more things of logistics and pulling in multiple locations and venues. The whole thing went off very smoothly. And this is a great way to end it because, like it or not, this is a humongous crossroads for the NFL. The NFL is accepting, embracing, dealing with, and regulating sports gambling without any question. I do think we might need to give the NFL a little credit for keeping that back long enough until the technology, the support, the infrastructure was maybe at a point where they said, okay, we now think this stuff is so secure, it won't even be on the radar as far as infiltrating our game. And if people make mistakes, which they will, we will get after them right away. We talked about that preseason. We talked about that during the season. I bet you we will talk about it before the next season. So this was a huge success, but I actually think, whoa, this is a massive milestone in the relationship between sports gambling and professional sports. This is the biggest one. This is the biggest event. It went off smooth as could be. So we are in a new era. Like it or not, we are in a new era, and it looked like a huge success.
Massive. All right, everybody, I'm Hondo Carpenter. You're listening to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Remember, if you don't know this, I do an additional podcast, about 5 minutes, Riding with Dexter and Hondo. It's just a little bit of information that maybe you don't get on this podcast every day. It's different. When you go to the Apple or Spotify, it's a second. This one's also available if you don't want to look at us, which I know you want to look at John, but not me. You can get our regular podcast there, audio only. You can get our 5-minute smaller podcast every single day, but you can find me at si.com/NFL/Raiders, at Hondo SR on IG, or at Hondo Carpenter on X, formerly known as Twitter, and si.com/NFL/Raiders. Don't forget, coming up Tuesday, I'll be in San Antonio. Hope to see you all there. John, thanks for joining us. Everybody, you continue to have a great weekend.